This story became something of a legend in my friend group. For a long time, I didn't want to talk about it. Not because it wasn't wild enough, but because it was personal. Messy. Painful. The kind of thing you don't relive unless someone really insists. So, here it is. This happened about 2 years ago, during the last stretch of my senior year of high school. It was early May. Graduation was right around the corner, teachers had completely stopped caring, and most of us had mentally checked out for summer. My friend group was small but tight. There was my boyfriend of 3 years, Kyle. My best friend since middle school, Sarah. Me. And a newer addition to the group, Brad, a guy with serious nice guy energy, the kind who always wanted to save the day. Kyle came from a very religious family. Not the kind of Christian people who actually practice kindness and charity, but the loud, hypocritical kind. The kind who preached love on Sunday, then turned around and spewed slurs, judged everyone, and somehow still believed they were morally superior. They went to church twice a week, every week. They invited me constantly. I never went. I was agnostic. Closeted bisexual. And honestly, their brand of religion made me physically uncomfortable. They never liked me much, and I knew it. What made things worse was their sense of entitlement. Kyle's parents were deeply involved in the church's finances. Donations. Grants. Maintenance. All of it. That gave them power, real power. Their church wasn't the center of town, but it had influence. Judges. Officials. Police. All loosely connected. Whenever they got into trouble, parking tickets, traffic stops, a few names dropped and the problem magically disappeared. Kyle himself, though, he wasn't awful. I'd known him since elementary school. He was usually kind. He was popular. He was confident. And yeah, he was hot. I was a teenager. I ignored a lot of red flags because of that. His parents treated him like he was God's gift to humanity, and that fed into his ego. I tolerated it. But his sister? Charlie was different. She was a year younger than us, and she was the only genuinely good person in that family. A real Christian. Kind, thoughtful, sincere. And she had this mischievous side. Whenever she got an idea, she'd get this little half-smile. A look that said something chaotic was about to happen. She was fun. Easy to talk to. Safe. We were close. Very close. She told me things she couldn't tell her family. To them, she was the perfect Christian daughter. To me, she was my friend. Sarah was my rock. She helped me through the death of my mom, something I still don't talk about much. I wasn't diagnosed with depression, but losing her shattered me. Sarah was there for me in ways I'll never forget. She was also the one who pushed me to ask Kyle out. I trusted her completely. And that's why what happened next destroyed me. One Tuesday, the 4 of us skipped school and went downtown, skating, grabbing food, doing what bored seniors do when they think they're invincible. At some point, I challenged Kyle to race me down the street on our boards. 30 seconds later, I hit a loose stone and went face-first into the sidewalk. I fractured my arm. And got a concussion. The concussion was my fault. The fractured arm was just bad luck. I tried to laugh it off, but my body had other plans. My arm started swelling. I couldn't walk straight. So instead of ditching school, we ended up in the ER. The doctors decided to keep me overnight for observation. Hospital understaffed, concussion protocol, all that. Kyle and Sarah stayed with me. The next day, I was sent home with strict instructions: no screens, no stimulation, basically exist like a vegetable for 10 days. So I did. I slept. I ate. I stared at walls. And when I was finally cleared to use my phone again, I opened it to a message that changed everything. The first message I saw was from Brad. That alone was strange. We weren't close, and he'd never messaged me privately before. He didn't say much. Just sent a link. And a password. No explanation. No context. Normally, I would have ignored it. But something about it felt deliberate. Heavy. Like he was handing me something he didn't want to carry anymore. So I opened it. The link led to a private storage account, one of those cloud services where you can lock photos and videos behind a password. And inside, there were gigabytes of content. Photos. Videos. Entire folders. All of them featured Kyle and Sarah. Together. Not just suggestive selfies or flirty pictures. I'm talking full-on sex tapes. Screenshots from Snapchat chats. Explicit captions. Close-ups. Everything. It looked like an amateur porn archive. The timestamps made my stomach drop. The most recent files were from that Tuesday night. The night I was lying in a hospital bed with a fractured arm and a concussion. Brad finally explained. Kyle had a thing. He liked recording himself having sex and uploading it for a private group of guys, close friends, people he trusted, so they could use it. Apparently, Brad had recently been added. And it made him sick. I sat there, scrolling, numb. Trying to process what I was seeing. For 3 years, Kyle and I barely did anything. He always talked about saving it for marriage. About purity. About God. The furthest we'd ever gone was a blowjob after a football game months earlier. Meanwhile, he was sleeping with my best friend, and documenting it. I don't remember crying at first. I remember shaking. When I confronted Kyle a few days later, he denied everything. Called me paranoid. Called me crazy. Called me a bitch. So I showed him the evidence. That's when he brought in his parents. They accused me of faking the photos. Claimed I had photoshopped everything. And then they threatened me. They said they would report me for creating and possessing child pornography. Kyle and Sarah had only turned 18 a few months earlier. They knew the police would eventually prove me right. But they also knew Brad would be destroyed in the process. And our city was ruthless about that kind of thing. So I dropped it. I left. I thought that was the end. I thought we were done. But apparently, his parents decided otherwise. They insisted Kyle and I stay together. Just until graduation. They wanted to save face with their extended family and their church. They knew, deep down, that he was guilty. But protecting their image mattered more. And I was too tired to fight. So I agreed. I smiled in public. Kept quiet. And slowly slipped back into the darkest mental place I'd ever been. I thought the worst part was over. I was wrong. There's a funny thing about religious families. They're just as capable of producing queer kids as anyone else. Kyle had avoided that particular problem. His sister hadn't. About a week after the confrontation, I was back at Kyle's house. We barely spoke. Everything between us was stiff, fake, and exhausting. So, like I had many times before, I ended up in Charlie's room. Whenever Kyle and I fought, Charlie was the one I leaned on. She was calm. Kind. Thoughtful. And unlike the rest of her family, genuinely Christian. Not loud about it, not cruel about it. Just real. That day, though, something was off. She wasn't smiling. She kept pacing. Her usual playful energy was gone. I assumed she knew about Kyle cheating. I was half right. When I asked what was wrong, she hesitated. Then told me she had a secret. I wasn't in the mood for drama. But this was Charlie. So I listened. She told me she'd been in the closet for years. 14 or 15. That was when she started realizing it. In a family like hers, that wasn't something you admitted. Not out loud. Not ever. She said she'd always felt safe around me. That I was the only person she trusted enough to be herself with. Then she admitted something else. She'd been trying to get closer to me for a long time. She thought I was straight. She didn't want to ruin anything. And I was dating her brother. So she swallowed it. She said she was jealous of Kyle. Of our relationship. Of how easily I fit into his life. But when everything fell apart, when she found out what he'd done, she thought maybe, finally, she had a chance. In any other situation, I would have said no. We'd known each other for over a decade. She was my boyfriend's sister. She felt like family. But I wasn't thinking clearly. I was hurt. Angry. Humiliated. And part of me wanted revenge, even if I didn't want to admit it yet. So I didn't stop it. I won't go into details. That part is private. But afterwards, lying there in the quiet, reality started to creep back in. I felt awful. Not because of Kyle. Because of Charlie. I thought I'd used her. That I'd taken advantage of someone who trusted me during one of the most vulnerable moments of her life. I was ready to disappear. She noticed. And instead of pulling away, she stayed. She talked me out of some really dark thoughts while we got dressed. Made sure I was okay before we said goodbye. That wasn't supposed to be the start of anything. But it was. We kept seeing each other. For her, it was finally being close to the person she'd had feelings for years. For me, it was an escape. Someone who didn't lie to me. Someone who saw what her family really was. Someone who didn't ask me to pretend everything was fine. And somewhere along the way, Charlie started nudging me out of my misery. Toward something else. Toward a plan. Because while I was drowning in betrayal, she'd been listening. And what she heard made everything personal.